The Labuan Director's Visa is a 2-year multiple entry renewable visa that is available to anyone looking to start a company in Labuan. The visa allows you to live in most of Malaysia indefinitely, this being Western Malaysia and Labuan. So this includes Kuala Lumpur, Penang, and pretty much all the places you'd really stay, particularly for business. I'm Flynn from Offshore in Asia. We help people move, do business and invest in Southeast Asia. The second benefit is that it is totally legitimate, and this is actually a bit harder than it sounds in Southeast Asia to really operate a company in the clear that comes with a valid work permit and visa, particularly for online businesses or businesses that are working remotely or working offshore. It is quite the challenge. The visa is multiple entry, meaning you can come and go from Malaysia as you like. If you live in Kuala Lumpur, as many directors do, you're already connected to a large part of Asia, and being an airline hub, you can fly almost anywhere in Asia that you need for business in just a direct flight, if not maybe 2 flights, but it's a really good way to get around, especially if you are working in the Asian region. The next benefit is tax advantages. The 3% tax rate of Labuan Company really is pretty hard to go past. It's one of the lowest, if not the lowest corporate tax rate in Asia. It is important to note, to get this 3%, you need to meet the substance requirements. So that requires generally a minimum spend of 50,000 ringgit per year, more for certain particular industries. That'll be another video where we cover that. You also need to hire 2 staff in Labuan. Furthermore, if you come from a residency by taxation country, living in Malaysia indefinitely could open the door to becoming non-resident in your country, although that's a very specific thing to each individual situation, so you'll have to get in touch with us if you want to learn more about that. And to further add to the tax savings, although you do have to pay yourself a 10,000 ringgit salary per month, that's about $2,200 at the time of recording. So once you pay that mandatory salary, you can pay the rest of your wages and dividends, which aren't taxed in Malaysia. However, do bear in mind there are tax changes coming to Malaysia in 2026. So if you're watching that then, or after then, or even coming up to that, because if you don't want to get into something that might change. So just get in touch with us if you want to learn about those changes and how they may affect your taxation situation. Another benefit of having a Labuan Director's Visa is that you can open a personal bank account in Malaysia. Now, there's not many visas that allow you to do this in Malaysia. Although it might not be a deciding factor for many people, it is a flag you can plant, and if you can do it, why wouldn't you? You're also allowed to bring dependents on this visa, so if you have a spouse and children, they're allowed to come with you and live in Malaysia. To secure the Labuan Director's Visa, you need to have a Labuan Company, and you'll need to reapply for the visa 18 months after you first applied, so 6 months before the visa expires. Only specific industries qualify for Labuan Companies, so I suggest getting in touch with us to find out whether you do or don't. The reason I say this is because in recent years, there's been a large degree of changes to Labuan and what you are and aren't allowed to do in there and what companies you can and can't run. For that reason, there's a lot of dated information online. There are also background checks with opening a Labuan Company just to make sure you aren't associated with anything nefarious or illegal. Bear in mind, you'll have to do the company ones if you want the visa anyway. So they were the requirements for the Labuan Company. And these are the requirements for the Labuan Visa, and we're going to get into that now. So the first one is the salary payment I already mentioned. So it's 10,000 ringgit a month, and it's going to be at $2,200, and you have to pay yourself that. And the tax rate's anywhere from 0 to 28%. It really depends on your personal setup and what you're doing. However, when you factor it in, if you can afford and justify Labuan Company, that amount for the visa isn't terrible at all. You also need to submit a business plan, so this will include things like your objectives, business goals, target market, and a 3-year projected financial outlook. You also need to submit a personal resume along with the business plan, and naturally you'll have to comply with the laws of Labuan and Malaysia going forth, because if you fail to maintain the company or pay for the company or you name it, you'll obviously lose the visa, and I think that's more or less a given with any visa really. Although it's possible to get a Labuan Director's Visa without meeting the substance requirements, most people will also be interested in meeting these substance requirements to qualify for that 3% tax rate. The substance requirements vary between each approved industry in Labuan. However, we're going to talk of the most general substance requirements, probably what our clients encountered the most and what they'll be requiring. There are some high requirements that's more for insurance and financial services, very generally like quite high-end, quite corporate things. The first one is hiring staff. So for most industries, you'll need to hire 2 Malaysians in Labuan full-time. The next requirement is the minimum spend. So you have to spend a minimum of 50,000 Malaysian ringgit per year on the company. That's about $11,000. And by the time you've met the staffing requirements and all the other compliance, you're probably going to be around there anyway. So we don't really consider that requirement per se. And the third one is to have an office. So generally you need to rent an office in Labuan. This isn't a big problem because a trust company will facilitate this, and more on that in a second. Although all of this sounds like a lot of work, the vast majority of your things on the ground will be facilitated by a Labuan Trust Company. And it's actually mandatory to work with a Labuan Trust Company. What a Labuan Trust Company does is effectively manage all your compliance in Labuan. They can help you with staffing, with bookkeeping, with renting the office space. Just about everything you need to do will be facilitated by them. So they make your life a lot easier. And although all these things I've just mentioned sound like a lot of work, with a trust company, and especially if you work with us and a trust company, it makes things a lot easier. So what are the costs? I've already touched on them, it's points throughout the video. However, to get the visa itself, it's going to cost 1,225 Malaysian ringgit, and that's about 270 US dollars at the time of recording this. This price also includes the work permit, and it's worth noting now that you also need to get approval from not just the Department of Immigration, but also Labuan Authority to get the work permit and visa. It's not that difficult, and although you need to get it from 2 different people, it's not a huge challenge. Approval for the visa usually takes 45 to 60 days as well. Additionally, forming a Labuan company costs no less than 3,000 US dollars, and annual upkeep is about the same. For companies looking to meet the subsistence requirements of those tax savings, that'll generally start around 50,000 Malaysian ringgit or 11,000 US dollars a year. I've talked about it already, so I won't go into any more detail. If you're a business owner looking to save on tax, looking to live offshore, especially if you're interested in Malaysia, the Labuan Director's Visa really is almost too good to be true when you break it down. If you do fit the criteria, and that's the real challenge, is fitting this criteria, but if you can manage that, you've got a visa that's going to work in tandem with a company that has one of the lowest tax rates around in a respected jurisdiction, and not to mention the incredibly low cost of living in Malaysia and the amazing value you get for that price. It really is hard to go past it, and it's absolutely something you should consider.